Field by field, Mazex is bringing Canadian seed to farmers across Canada. Mazex is your source for high-performance soybeans and grain, silage, and grazing corn hybrids. Visit mazex.com to find your local Mazex representative.
The Agronomists is brought to you by Farming Forward, The Wheat School, and Real Ag Radio. Real Agriculture's Real Ag Radio is Canada's only daily one-hour agricultural radio show broadcast across North America on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. Hosted by Sean Haney, the show airs weekdays 4:30 Eastern across Canada and the U.S. and is rebroadcast the next day at 7 a.m. Listen live on Rural Radio 147 or check out the podcast wherever you get your audio and download past episodes at realagriculture.com/radio. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Agronomists. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. It is very good to be back. We did have a little hiccup last week, but don't worry, everything's fine, and we're back for at least 1 week. And then, of course, next week is Holiday Monday, which I cannot believe. But quickly, of course, as always, if you collect those CEU credits, make sure you head on over to realagriculture.com/agronomists tomorrow morning. Let us know you took in the show. We'll get you those CEU credits. And hey, I am pretty excited about this conversation. So we are going to talk about drones. We're going to talk about their applications, what's allowed, what's not, and all the amazing things we can do with this piece of technology. So I will put it out there, everybody. Get your questions in early so we can cover them all in this hour together. So I am super excited to bring in my guests. I've got with me George Gaeke. Rhymes with cake, George tells me. Thank you very much, of Olds College out of Alberta, and Adrian Rivard with Drone Spray Canada out of Ontario. Welcome here, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right, George, we'll start with you. I did mention, of course, it is Labor Day, long weekend coming up. So I'm going to guess you're rather busy this week getting ready for school starting next week. I do appreciate it.
Yes. Classes start Tuesday, right after Labor Day. So this week is a lot of meetings with other faculty and with the dean, and then also obviously getting ready for classes. But I'm also involved with research, and that's where I use most of the drone technology that I'm involved with. So Olds College has a research center as well, and focused on agricultural research. So during the summer, I do a lot of drone work and also data analytics on the data that we've collected with the drones.
Mm-hmm. And I think at some point tonight, we're going to talk about the impact of wind and drone applications. And if anyone's been to your area of Alberta, they'll know all about why that might be a concern.
Sure.
We'll talk about that. All right. And Adrian, tell us where you're from and what has kept you busy this week.
We're down here in Chatham in Southern Ontario. We operate all around Southern Ontario, up to Quebec as well. This week here, we're kind of getting out of our big rush. We're doing a lot of fungicide research programs, so we're switching gears. Tomorrow we start our first application in an invasive species program. We were on delay because of permits on that as well. But tomorrow I get to crawl around in some swamps and fly some drones, spray some invasive species. And in the meantime, just taking a lot of calls and bookings on a lot of work to come here later on this fall, doing a lot of cover crops.
Mm-hmm. That is definitely one of the applications we're going to talk about tonight. Invasive species, swamps. Can you just get rid of the mosquitoes, or does it have to be plants that you're dealing with? What are you potentially dealing with?
The mosquito part we're not really doing too much of right now. We get to get eaten by them. As we have to kind of crawl around and spend the day in there. Unfortunately, I can't say too much about the program because it is still research, but it's a very aggressive invasive species if you wanted to kind of jump to some conclusions.
Yeah, we have a few of those. So there you
Yeah.
go. Okay, so but that is maybe a good place to start, is that we've had drones, UAVs, whatever we want to call them, in the agriculture space for quite some time. Started out perhaps more strictly, on the imaging side, but we have very quickly had the technology come along and the ideas come along of what we can do with this. So George, maybe that's one of the places we'll start, is kind of laying the groundwork of what is allowed right now, and what isn't, and then maybe we can dig into a little of what we're actually doing and some of the research that's happening. But George, catch us up to speed on what can the average person, let's say, do with a drone.
Uh, well, as far as any kind of imaging, like you mentioned with drones, that's all legal. In fact, we have a number of farmers in our area that are using the mini drones that are, you don't even need a license, a pilot's license or registration to fly those, just to, fly around their fields and see what's happening, or look at some of their livestock as well. So just, less than 249 grams, and the way that the technology has come along, those can produce really good images, and they can even be used for mapping missions. So for mapping your fields and that. When it comes to more of the higher end things like spraying and that, Canada is behind a lot of other countries in what is allowed right now. And the holdup is really with one of the departments or one of the branches of Health Canada. So with the Pest Management Regulatory Association or agency, they're the ones that write on the labels of chemicals, of what you can do with them and that. And so when it comes to spraying chemicals from a drone, that is not legal yet. So pesticides and that are not legal. You can do research into that, and you can spray water as an example to figure out droplet patterns and that kind of stuff. But the rest of it is not. There is one fungicide that has been approved already. Another one, though, that I know Adrian has mentioned just before the show that they do a lot is seeding. Seeding is legal, and there's a lot of that being done. Even I saw the other day a video of people using it for actual reforestation. So not just seeding crops, but firing little pellets of spruce seeds and that down into the ground over areas that have either been logged or where there's been forest fires. So that's kind of pretty cool. Like you say, the technology has really come along, and there's lots of capabilities in that regard.
Of course, that puts poor tree planters out of a job. Just kidding. If anyone has ever done tree planting, you'll know it's not a very fun one. It's not a great job. Okay, so Adrian, that is very much what you are doing on a day-to-day basis, is obviously some of the research, as you mentioned, but some of these commercial applications as well. So this is still relatively new as far as the seeding aspect, perhaps doing some fertility treatments, these sorts of things. But what would you say has been sort of the adoption rate, or at least the interest from the phone calls you're getting, those sorts of things, of using a drone to do some seeding applications?
Yeah. Again, we get tons of phone calls every day for work we can't do. Again, the fungicide stuff would be extremely popular. Again, it's off the table right now. Again, that's PMRA side. And fertility, again, foliar feeding is again, we're doing a lot of that. We can do liquid on that one as well. In terms of fertility, like last year we did about 160,000 pounds of urea onto corn. This spring we did about 90,000 pounds onto wheat mostly. Again, the granular applications are quite an interesting adaptation. We don't cover nearly the acres as a ground rig, but again, typically we're kind of the rescue call, or again, sometimes we've seen some pretty ugly cornfields and gotten some response out of them. Pretty yellow, and
Yeah.
it's been good. But sometimes again, we did a lot of split applications and stuff too. Sort of, it's more popular in the European kind of cropping system. They'll go out and top dress or, do multiple urea applications on their wheat. That sort of program is becoming more accessible with the drones. Again, we can go out when you wouldn't even dare put a ground machine in a field
Yeah.
in March, April, and get a first, about 100 pounds of urea out sort of thing, and keep that crop kind of moving along. That's really had a lot of interest, and again, we've done tons of that. Same thing on the cover crops, getting an early jump in the fall here, and getting things established. Again, a lot of grazing, people trying to open up that window, get in behind some corn, and hopefully there's enough there to get some cattle on it or something.
George, Adrian brings up a good point about trafficability potentially of a field at different times of year. Is that a question that comes up as far as the application of when you would choose a drone over perhaps some other way of putting, let's say, fertilizer on, etc.?
For sure. Especially in fields where you've got like wet areas, when you go out seeding, you don't want to get in there with ground equipment, but you also don't want to leave it. It's going to get weeds coming up as it dries out and that. So that's a really good application for for a drone to go out there and do seeding on that. And I think as we see some of these other like pesticides and that being allowed, the same thing will apply in there when you've got either time of year making it difficult to get out there with land equipment, or just heavy rain or something like that is stopping you. Drones really have a part to play then in that.
So, Peter, that sort of leads on to your statement, Adrian, about the rescue treatment, or this is a really good tool when things may be too wet. And so the question is about scalability, right? So I look over your shoulder, and that looks like a pretty large piece of equipment there for a drone over your shoulder. At the same time, though, when we've got Pete says, with a 120-foot boom, a 1,600-gallon tank, it's a lot of acres to cover in a day. Do you see, drones replacing sprayers or as a complement to spraying?
No, I don't think that everyone should put their sprayers up for sale right now. Again, it's not going to be a direct replacement. There's a huge amount of work that, again, we work with a lot of very smart people in terms of deposition and pattern testing. Jason DeVoe was actually texting me I was like, what's going on? But anyways, I make him scratch his head a lot as to where the spray is going. Again, if you do something like a pre-emerge or something, you can get a very nice, consistent spray with a field sprayer. And right now we're not seeing that quality of spray out of the spray drones. Again, streaking, a lot of questions that we really have to kind of address with the drones. And a lot of the difficulty is every year it seems like there's a new drone, new flagship, and again, there's a T40 behind me. There's T50s out now. Again, a lot of the work we do is T30s with hydraulic nozzles. You just completely change the fluid delivery, and that really changes things a whole bunch. Productivity, again, the rates on the liquid, we're not necessarily going to always see the same carrier rates, and that's where, again, a lot of the difficulties come into question. Again, PMRA has a huge task to get these products approved, and a lot of them aren't necessarily built to work at the carrier rates a drone wants to go to. Again, in the U.S., China, a lot of the countries, they want to spray at 2 gallons an acre or less. Well, a contact product can't work that way. That's not, again, to take a page out of Jason's book, if we have 100 people in one pizza, well, there's not enough pizzas to go around. So we need to have more pizzas, more carrier, and that's where, again, there's difficulty in essentially the way that spraying with drones is done in other countries or other areas, and the way that we want to do it here in North America. And we got a long ways to go, but it's still coming.
Mm-hmm.
I'll
George, go
maybe
ahead.
just jump in and mention a couple things. So we've done some experimentation with swarms of drones,
Okay. Yep.
and that's one way of scaling rather than going, bigger drones, bigger tanks, to have like 5 drones that are swarmed and can cover then obviously 5 times as much as just a single drone. I think another area where it's going to be very useful is in spot spraying. So rather than, if you're thinking of applying something to your entire field, yeah, maybe drones are not that efficient. But if you go out there and identify some problem areas and you just want to do some spot spraying, then you've got a lot of benefits to using a drone over ground equipment. One of the biggest ones being compaction. You're not, and also destruction of the crop if it's already growing and driving through it. You're not making any contact with the crop at all. Just as another concept, I guess, we had a conference here this last summer at Olds College for agricultural journalists, actually. And they came from all over the world, and I was talking to a couple from Australia that were saying they're actually using it for spraying along roads, and that kind of freaked me out. So it's been approved in Australia for that. You see a highway and there's a drone flying in the ditch beside the highway spraying, and I thought, wow, yeah, Canada has a ways to go with our approvals here when you
We
think
might
about
not
that
ever
kind of
be
an
okay with that. Let's be honest. We maybe will have different rules.
Yeah.
Potentially. Maybe we won't be okay with it. And maybe we will. I guess we'll find out. Okay. You two are heavily into this drone thing. Can I put in a request that we change the word swarm to something less scary? Can we say like aerial acrobatics or like some sort of
Just
formation? Maybe formation flying. I don't know, but I just
the
find
murder of
swarm.
crows is still sticking with you.
I'm just
The murder
saying
of drones. That's
yeah,
Yeah,
a
murder
murder of
drones. Yeah.
drones, right? Come on, guys, help me out.
Well, I
It's
mean,
the crows.
even
Get it?
we've had
Sure.
requests to not use the word drone just because of its
yeah.
military connotation as well. So,
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're,
for a while, there we were pretty keen to call them UAVs, right? Unmanned
yeah,
aerial vehicles. But that term has sort of dropped off, and I think we do just use drone now. And yes, I suppose it has some negative connotation, but I'm gonna go with I'll take drone, but let's get rid of swarm. Anyway, we'll deal with that in a minute. Okay, we're not gonna solve all the world's problems tonight, but we're gonna try. So now Ken's got a good question, and we've sort of touched on this in both your answers. So Ken asked, why are we limited to electric drones? Why not put a gas engine and want to make it a decent size? I feel like now we're just talking about helicopters. So Adrian, maybe I'll go to you first on this one. Do we need, as George says, if we go to aerial acrobatics or teamwork in the sky, swarms, do we need larger or how do we figure out this question?
Essentially, the way that a conventional quadcopter or something would work, we need to have, again, motors that respond very rapidly. So the motors themselves need to be electric. Back, a long time ago, having little swash plates and little helicopter rotors that would move, it just not or it wouldn't work. So you'd essentially need a hybrid system. Again, the amount of fuel you're going to carry is a limitation. And again, as much as regulations don't necessarily see a giant LiPo battery that weighs 30 pounds as dangerous goods on the drone. They deal more with flammable liquids. So if we throw a fuel or kerosene or something in there, uh, that's going to be more of a consideration on a safety standpoint. Although if ever you've seen one of these LiPos go off, it's very exciting. And then again, it's more so a power to weight thing, and I think this is kind of where right now we're seeing a bit of a glass ceiling in the technology. Again, a fully loaded T40 or T50 is only going to last about 7-8 minutes in the air before it runs out of power. It's just enough time to kind of balance out a spray. So we're actually kind of down to an efficient program where basically you can spray and just about be empty on battery by the time you come back. There's not too many times when you need an extended range. Again, you can balance that out with the reduced payload. again, the new regulations coming into force will be up to 150 kilograms. I still think a lot of the manufacturers are struggling to get batteries that would actually be able to output us enough to actually do something,
Right.
carry that much of a payload. You almost double the payload on this thing. That battery's going to last 3 minutes. That's
Right.
go.
Can't get a lot done in 3 minutes.
No.
So yeah, so it kind of limits these
But
things. Yeah.
yeah, I have been talking again some other engineers who have been trying to get some direct replacements on again the batteries. Again, there's difficulties. Uh, again, coming back from the aviation side, where everything was regulated, every single part was serial numbered and had traceability. Even again for our company, we're not allowed to fly the drone unmodified. It goes into a different experimental world. So if somebody makes this really interesting hybrid system that just kind of piggybacks, like that's what one guy was kind of thinking. Well, now it's no longer a DJI drone or an XAG or
Right.
whoever made it. Now it's Bob's Flying Gizmos Incorporated
Right.
device. And so now, again, a lot of those safety standards have to be reevaluated. Sounds easy in principle.
So, okay, and I want to come back to this, but we're going to hop to a clip here for just a moment. But I want to come back to this point of, I think a lot of people are somewhat frustrated that Canada is behind on perhaps allowing some of these applications, but at the same time, it's not as simple as just taking, a sprayer type concept and putting it up in the air. I mean, it is more complicated than that for a lot of reasons. So, I'm not going to make Jason DeVoe feel bad for having texted you, Adrian, and not me. A little bit I am. But we are going to go to our first clip of the night, which is a spray miss episode with Jason DeVoe and Tom Wolfe talking about spraying by drone and the importance of doing a good job regardless of what you're using to do that spray job and why with a drone it may be more complicated. So producer Jay, if you would.
There are 5 things you need to know to be a better spray applicator: swath width, droplet size, water volume, drift, and local laws. Swath width tells the operator how much area they can cover in a pass. Choose an altitude high enough to give the widest effective swath, but too high and the spray will drift and create non-uniform coverage. Too low and the swath will be too narrow with gaps in your coverage. Use tracers like food grade dyes or water-sensitive paper to see how wide your swath is. This is especially important for broadacre applications. Heads up! Spraying bare ground gives you a wider swath than when spraying dense canopies, which will intercept the spray before it can spread out. Your swath will narrow when spraying crops. And remember, those drones blow no matter what, so use that air to your advantage. Let's talk ammo. Finer spray means more droplets, and that's important for low spray volumes. Small droplets can be good for vector spraying, but they aren't advisable for crop applications. Coarser sprays mean fewer droplets and narrower swaths, but they may be required on product labels to minimize risk. Drones can get more done if they use less water because of fewer refills. But more water allows the use of larger drops, which is sometimes necessary. If you're gonna hit him with as much water as you can. Sir, yes, sir! Compensate for the wind. Spray offset is when the wind consistently displaces some of the spray a short distance from the swath. We can account for displacement by offsetting the sprayer upwind. Drift is when wind pulls a lot of spray away from the swath and out of the treatment area, and we need to avoid that. So use larger droplets, slow down, or park that bird until conditions improve. You may think you're a maverick, but you gotta follow the law.
The Agronomist is brought to you by Real Ag Radio, Farming Forward, and the Wheat School. From varietal advancements, protein and yield management, precision farming, and through to marketing, Real Agriculture's Wheat School is a video series that tackles every facet of the wheat growing season in an engaging and informative format. The Wheat School is made possible through Syngenta Canada, C&M Seeds, and Alberta Grains. Learn more at wheatschool.com. All right, we are back. And I do love some ridiculous Tom Wolfe, Jason DeVoe stuff. They are really good at what they do. All right. Okay. So in that, a few different things in there, and I love that we get some visuals of why spraying by drone can be so difficult. So I like to see some of that spray pattern and that mention of wind speed and how we may have to offset the drone. So George, I'll go to you first on this one, and I know we've got some of your slides I want to touch on tonight as well on sort of some of the mapping and those sorts of things. But walk us through trying to do research in a place like Alberta where I don't think the wind ever quits. How much does that impact the work that you do?
It affects it greatly. We were doing some spray pattern research, and the best time of the day to do it is very early in the morning before the wind starts to pick up. Who wants to be out there at that time? Not too many people. But so as soon as you start introducing wind, like you saw in those slides, different things start happening, and sometimes they're unexpected. And like the video showed as well, you've always got the downdraft of the drone to contend with as well. So those factors really do come into play, and I think really that's one of the reasons why it hasn't been approved yet. Is I think maybe Canada is a little more cautious than some other countries when it comes to things like that. I want to tell you a little story. My wife grew up on a farm in Manitoba, southern Manitoba, and she can recall they had a grasshopper infestation, and they were her father got in a crop duster to spray the field, and the kids had to stand at the end of the field with their arms in the air so that the pilot could see where the end of the field was. And so she's standing there. This plane comes down, covers them with the chemical as well. And as she watched, all these grasshoppers just immediately froze and died on the plants. It was pretty freaky. So we don't want that kind of stuff happening anymore, I don't think.
No, thank you, please. Yeah. So, and I mean that this is a good point. And I think it is part of the frustration for some is that, people will say, and we saw this a lot this summer, especially with as wet as the season was for some areas, we saw frustration at fungicide timing where, why isn't this allowed yet? It's allowable by plane. So why not drones? We know that part of that is the technicality of that it's not on labels, but Adrian, when you are doing the research, when you are looking at, applications with liquid that potentially could be a insecticide or a herbicide or something like that, how much differently does that spray pattern look or work, like all the questions you put to Jason DeVoe, with a drone versus potentially, an aerial application?
They're vastly different. It's again, one big thing is a helicopter or an aircraft, they generate lift. Drone does not. The rotors are not like a helicopter is a spinning wing. These are literally just little propellers that keep it from Mother Earth. If they shut off in flight, it turns into a brick. Ask me how I know. And then again, a helicopter can still auto-rotate and get those rotors moving to keep that thing going to the ground. So translational speed is basically when that rotor is spinning, every new spin forward is going to be in some clean air, and it's no longer creating as much turbulence. So a helicopter will never ever spray from a hover unless they're absolutely crazy. It's again, the drones though, they don't go fast enough in a lot of situations, and we are making, again, we're not laying a nice swath down. Again, we can start to get to those speeds now if you're doing a small enough volume and have the drones kind of cranked out max. But again, a lot of times in a higher volume application, we're not going that fast anyways. You will actually kind of see the spray kind of collapse in that spray width, and it kind of makes an interesting phenomenon. Again, a lot of the work that we've been doing around the world, even we have been doing a lot of experiments with an international task force. And again, we've been to Australia, Brazil, Hungary, Spain, the US, Canada, doing a lot of GLP drift studies. And again, we're catching drift down to 200 meters versus conventional methods, and we're finding it. And that's where, again, there's a lot of technology that has to be improved upon. And again, a lot of the countries like Brazil, the US, where, they do say if it's an aerial application label, treat it the same as a drone, fill your boots. Again, some of the efforts are to reduce the buffer zones, or at least to find out where they actually are. Because again, say you have a 100-meter buffer zone from an aircraft, if we go up to coarser droplets, if we do this, what can we do to reduce that
Right.
buffer zone down to, say, 30 meters, 20 meters? So there's, again,
Yeah.
a lot of questions there that are not solved. And again, as a lot of us kind of got the takeaways from Jason and Tom's video there, which had some fancy piloting done by some of us.
Some people we might know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, again, efficiency and work speed shouldn't always characterize how you use a drone to spray. Again, I talk with a lot of applicators, and they want to just paid by the acre, hammer down a gallon, 2 gallons per acre, just cover the ground. Well, again, we do a lot of this research work, and we see a lot of products fail at 2 gallons an acre. It depends. Some work, some don't. It's, again, a lot of that work has to be done to establish what actually works. Again, the registrants have a liability to the end user to say a product will work. If they say go and spray it at 2 gallons an acre and it doesn't work, well, they're not in a good position.
Yeah. So, and that's, I think, a key point is that even as we see potentially more products come online, it may not necessarily be every product that ends up with a label that says drone application is okay. And that's something we simply will have to work with on what will be allowed and what won't, which I think is a key point to exactly your point, Adrian, that, there are going to be certain products that it works better for, and ones that, a company may not want to back as a means of application because it may not be effective. Further to the one pizza for 100 people, my solution: get sharp elbows and just get everybody out of the way. Anyway, grab the pizza and run. Okay, so I want to talk about two things. One, yes, cover crop seeding, because I think that is certainly on the uptick, at least out my way. But first, George, I want to talk a bit more about some of the scouting and some of the applications of drones that don't involve spraying. So some of the work that you're doing on, perhaps more advanced uses of drones, not just for, crop checking, but maybe actually mapping and perhaps doing some drainage mapping, those sorts of things. So, so what else can we be doing with these drones?
Sure. If you want to go to the third slide, I think would be a good place to start slides that I sent in there. So just to give you an idea of, even with those, 249 gram drones, when you combine them with a flight planner that allows you to actually create mapping missions, you can get very interesting and very detailed maps of your fields, and also 3D. A lot of people don't realize that as your drone is flying over, because it has GPS on it, every image that is taken is geotagged with its location where it was taken from. So there's software out there then that can stitch all these images together and actually create a 3D surface. So that's how we can end up doing drainage planning and that kind of stuff from just a very simple drone image. And it's always interesting, the things that you see from the air versus what you see when you're walking around in a field, or if your crop is already growing, what you see from the edge of the field versus being out in it. Next slide. So the image there at the bottom left, this is something that we do quite often if we have, say, a hail event or a major rain event. Just pop up a drone and fly over the field and see what's happening. So that was quite a major rain event that we had. And you can see how, you've got some issues with water there draining off. But we also then use the drones for regular crop scouting, so fly the field, create a map using, we use multispectral cameras, so they can pick up stuff that we can't see with our human eyes. And through analysis, we can figure out a little bit more about what's going on with the crop in the field. So at the top image there, you just see an application where you could assign scouting points. So you fly the field really quickly, it creates a map right away, and then you can send the drone back out to areas of interest and have it go down as low as you want and take, very high-res images of what's going on in those particular areas. So you can see problem area there. And then the two at the bottom there, using the same map, again, using multispectral imagery, created a zone map for variable rate spraying. So we've got, one of our sprayers is a variable rate sprayer. So we can create that zone prescription map from the imagery and then put that into the sprayer. And it has GPS on it as well. So as you go across the field then with that, it's turning nozzles on and off as it encounters these different zones to apply either more or less of whatever input you're putting into the field then. So, those have been around for a while, those different types of technologies with drones. This is the one area that I think, yeah,
hang on,
absolutely.
George, can I ask what happened at the bottom there that it is? I would love to know what that shows.
That is a very good question. So that's one of our main research fields, and we had done trials the previous year, different trials in that bottom area, and you can see it's amazing how long the effects of what you do on a field can last and affect future crops. So that bottom area was
so that was all need. That was like plots or like trials in there.
That field is about 120 acres.
Okay, yeah.
In size, yeah. So, but it had been broken up into several different research sections.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just
I don't know
right there. Yeah.
I don't know that the farm really wants me using that image, but
we won't. It's somebody's neighbor. It's never the actual farmer,
exactly.
So it's fine. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
I will say though that this is one of the areas where another technology is, I think, going to start really taking over, and that's satellite imagery. We have for our prescription mapping that we do now, a lot of the times we're just using satellite imagery because the technology on satellites has been advancing as well, and now we can get imagery at 50 centimeters. Within the next year, it's going to be down to 30 centimeter pixels in satellite imagery, and for variable rate spraying, if you've got 8-foot sections or in your boom, then obviously 50 centimeter even is good enough for defining a zone. So we're moving to a lot of that for the broad acre. We're moving to satellite imagery. There's talk of while you can only do it when it's clear sky and atmosphere is going to affect the imagery and that, but again, as technology has advanced, that is becoming less and less relevant. In fact, we work with a satellite image company called Planet, really unique name, and they have now a product where they can basically, through all the algorithms that they've created, they can give you daily imagery of your field. Doesn't matter if there's clouds or not. So on cloudy days, it'll look at how your field was the day before, and then the day after the clouds, and it'll interpolate what was happening in your field during that time. And they've got a really good success rate with actually boots on the ground verification of what's going on. So this is as cool as drones are. I think this is one type of use of drones that is going to eventually be replaced by satellites. Maybe if you want to go to the last slide as well, there I'll just talk about that one a little bit, because that has to do now with pasture. So this was just a research project that we did to compare rotational grazing with free grazing. So in that particular field, there's 8 paddocks at the north end, and then just one larger one at the south end where we allowed the cattle to do free grazing there. And what we were looking at was how long does it take the crop or the forage crop basically to regenerate after you've had cattle in a paddock. So the very first image of the field on the left-hand side there is, you can see the date there, it was June. So we just moved the livestock into that area. And you can tell right away the one paddock that is red, quite red, that's where the cattle were for the most part, and we rotated them out. And then you can see in the next image in July how within 3 weeks that one paddock has already regenerated and become very high biomass again, ready for eventual re-rotation into it. And the interesting thing was at the end of all this, that we saw where with free grazing, we ended up with areas that were just laid bare and could not regenerate at all. So with the rotational grazing, we always had something coming back, and we're able to keep moving the cattle through there. So just a little bit of interesting use of drones again on the research side and analyzing the data that we get from it.
Yeah, fascinating to be able to actually see, the regrowth happen, over time, and be able to judge those. And my guess is that red dot near the bottom is a high spot, and they all decided to hang out there. Anyway, that's my guess. Or that's what sheep would do anyway. Sheep like to be up where they can see the coyotes coming to eat them. So they like to be up high. Fascinating stuff. Okay, so this segues quite nicely into this next topic, which is, of course, seeding by drone. And no, not everyone who's going to be putting down cover crops with the drone is going to have them grazed, even though I think that's what they should do. But I'm just the host. I don't actually get to tell people what to do, unfortunately. But I would say, even, personally, this is a plan that we have for one of our fields this year. And we've had Ruben Stone on this program before to talk about how he's using this up near Renfrew, and using it for different cover crops and those sorts of things. So Adrian, we are approaching or already within that window where this is going to be of incredible interest to a lot of farmers. What have you seen as far as the questions, what farmers are asking you to do, what agronomists want you to do? What are we doing with cover crops and seeding into the fall?
Yeah, a big part of it is again sequestering nitrogen and again improving soil health as quickly as we can. Again, throwing rye, cereal rye, or that's our biggest one we do. We do a fair amount of oats, typically into corn or soybeans. It's been very common. Again, we've done a few oat fields already. We've got another rye field or two we're doing kind of earlier this week, and kind of moving in. We booked another 300 acres today for everyone. Kind of wants mid-September around that leaf drop in the soys, hoping that again we're going to get a little more seed soil contact, and that's always kind of one thing that we see. If you go in with a drill and plant straight away, you'll get emergence a little sooner. And if you throw it out the drone, it might take a couple weeks for it to start kind of greening up more. That's just a common thing. And again, there are some things that work really well. Cereal rye and oats, again, are kind of up there. Throw in some tillage radish. We're kind of getting to that kind of window closing. We've done some hay seeding. That's one there, again, it's better if you can go and incorporate it after. But not everything always works. We grow winter canola here, and it grows fantastic in June off the combine header. And last year, my soybeans about this time were still looking pretty green. So again, I had the genius idea. Well, I've got the drones here anyways and the seed, so we'll just go and toss that out. And kind of, well, obviously it's cornfield this year, didn't make it.
Hmm.
But the roots would germinate. We would get things to kind of come out, and then it just kind of dried up, and that was pretty well it. So the low spots had a good catch. The even just a little rise of a couple feet, and it was, well, as bald as my
Wouldn't do
head.
it.
And so
Okay.
unfortunately
So
that had to be terminated. But
yeah. So winter canola so far anyway, a no on drone
yeah,
seeding. You would say probably at this point.
and
They're
we had
tiny
one wheat
seeds,
field that
Adrian.
was a dud. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that. You can do 3 pounds the acre. People are kind of wondering how
Yeah.
low we can go when,
Right.
again, 3 pounds, 4 pounds is very possible. That's not a big deal. It's, again, the biggest things are, again, like trying to patch up those water holes. Seed soil contact is a massive thing, which, again, we just can't get. It's physically impossible into a standing crop. Trying to time it with leaf drop does help, although, again, I had an oat field that I did last year into completely brown soybeans. I kind of told the grower this is kind of a crapshoot, but he had the seed anyway, so we threw it on. And in the spring, that was actually more in the late fall. It was just a beautiful, nice catch. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't have expected better results. Again, a lot of people wondering on rates. Again, typically if you broadcast, you typically want to up your rates about 30% from what you would drill in. But again, kind of the benchmarks we found, most people are happy around 50 pounds to the acre on rye and oats. Again, if you drill it in, you could go a little lower, but the idea of us throwing it out the drone, you get a big jump on things.
Yeah. So I get that's my one question, I guess, is that obviously if the soil's fit and you've got the drill and you've got the time, you can probably, seed a little less, it'll come up faster, great, cool. But we don't always have that luxury, especially if, you want to get something on after
We
soybeans,
planted
let's
corn
say.
this year. Yeah,
Yeah,
this year, yeah, people are planting
right?
corn in July, and
Yeah. It's good
you
to,
can't get
yeah.
behind it.
No, exactly. So like um have you done experiments into corn as far as like how early? Because I do know, I mean there's farmers that are putting um things down between the row early in the season when they still can, hoping for some regrowth after that crop comes off in the fall. What
Yeah.
are we seeing into corn?
Yeah, again, that early kind of interseeding is typically around V6 or just after kind of that critical weed free period. It seems like, again, talking with a lot of the the cover crop specialists, that again that works really well in the Midwest. Maybe they have better light interception into the rows. Again, some people do interseed. Again, farming is whatever. There's many ways to skin a cat. What
Mm-hmm.
you want to do your way, great. Um, I have not done anything outside of seed corn. Seed
Okay.
corn, again, once they destroy the males, trying to get something in there.
Yeah.
We've done quite a few fields of that. But nothing super early. Again, most of it kind of comes this time of year. And again, we've done lots and lots in the corn. Good results. And yeah.
Yeah. Have you done any, let's say, like going head to head with frost seeding in the late winter, early spring versus so putting red clover on in the spring?
Yeah, again, that's another huge market that kind of what jumpstarts our season. Uh, we do a lot of that, again, typically under that 10 pounds to the acre. And there's various results, or sorry, various reasons people want to do it.
Yeah.
We do charge a little bit more than the guy with a four-wheeler running around at -6, and I don't know how he's not frozen. Um,
I think they are actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're just
They
not
just don't
admitting it.
mind. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Again, whether people have done a swath or done a round and left ruts up to the differential in the quad and said, "Uh-oh, I missed my frost window." Down here in southern Ontario last year, we didn't get that much of a frosty
Yeah.
winter. It was quite nice
Mm,
from a balmy
yes.
standpoint.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of people actually, I don't know what it is, but they put the little spinner on the back of the quad. They put a bag of clover in, gun it down the field. They get to the end and it's empty, and it's
Yeah.
like, Like I have fiddled with this thing for days trying to get it to the right weight, whatever.
Yeah, it's true.
And
Yeah.
again, we've done thousands and thousands of acres of clover seeding, and we have scales on the drone. We got it.
You actually know how much went out. I will say we
Yeah.
have done frost seeding, and I would agree. No matter how you set that thing, it just comes out as fast as it comes out. I'm pretty sure. Yes.
Try that.
Okay. Yeah. We're just going to pause for just a moment. We've got our last read of the night. And then, George, I want to talk a little bit about how we might see this on some applications out west as well. So, Producer Jay, if you would. The Agronomist is brought to you by the Wheat School, Real Ag Radio, and Farming Forward. Farming Forward is a video series brought to you by the Farm Resilience Mentorship Program. Sharpen your soil health expertise with cover cropping, nitrogen management, and advanced grazing. Visit realagriculture.com/farming-forward for more, or check out our YouTube page. I do wish people went to YouTube, and sometimes they do. Anyway, go check it out. Thank you all for being here. Okay, so George, when we talk about, say, cover cropping in Western Canada, it looks quite a bit different. We have a much shorter growing season. We don't necessarily have the moisture. And I am being very kind when I say we don't have the moisture. At times it is incredibly dry, so dry that nothing grew for a couple of years in some areas. But there's still interest. There's still applications. There's still places where cover crops may fit in a system. So what is the interest like using drones in a seeding scenario where you are and the work that you're doing?
I think, like I mentioned, getting into areas where you can't get into with your ground equipment is one of the biggest uses out here in the West. But there is some cover crop being done. I live in Olds, so the college is in Olds, and it's about 45 minutes north of Calgary. We do not grow corn here for human consumption, but there's been a huge uptick lately in corn for forage or for silage. We've got a plant just east of town now that is processing that. So we're starting to see more corn growing here, and the same thing, like you've talked about, having some cover crops in between the rows there. But there are some people. I know one group here that is actually doing, trying to do large acre seeding with drones, experimenting with that. But getting the right rate and that is always an experiment, trying to figure that out. And like you say, we are a lot drier out here, so you don't want your seed to land on the ground and just sit there and not have any moisture. Which can happen. Not this year, though. We had, I think, kind of the same type of spring as you guys had there. Man, it just would not stop raining.
Yeah.
We thought it was going to be super dry, and then it started raining, and you couldn't get on the fields. So
I know there's no equity in it. But it brings up, one of the things that I think about from that perspective of, perhaps for pasture rejuvenation, like trying to get different species. But you're right. Realistically, unless you get a really good rain, or unless you run livestock across it to work it in, or a harrow to work it in, like there still needs to be some sort of second application or management tool to make sure that seed actually grows. So I mean, the application is there, but it's definitely not necessarily a cure-all for potentially trying to get new species introduced to a paddock. See, Adrian, you need lots more livestock to do all sorts of cool things. Chatham doesn't have any livestock, right? There's none.
There's
not
as many.
I don't. Yeah, there's not that many. There's far more where George is, and far more where I am as well. Okay, so I did pull a clip, and we don't have time to run it, but that's okay. But because I grabbed a clip of when Sean and the team were down at Agritechnica, that was last November. It was not that long ago. And, showing off the drone that was there, or a couple of the different options that were there. As far as I understand it, I mean, we're already, as Adrian, as you mentioned, sort of moving beyond even, what's latest and greatest a year ago is almost not the latest and greatest already. So Adrian, what do you see as, I mean, we've talked a bit about, why don't we go to potentially a different engine on these things? Is bigger better? What do you see as sort of the evolution in the next couple of years of how drone design actually sort of pans out?
Again, the crystal ball is a little bit hazy for everybody. Again, no one would kind of think the quadcopters would kind of be the design that's going right now. If you look at, say, two mainstream categories, quadcopter versus a fixed wing, unless you have a vertical takeoff, like a hybrid system where it goes and then it will move to a conventional aircraft or airplane kind of style. The big problem is infrastructure. Again, the licensing requirements that we have for the drones that are over 25 kilograms. Transport Canada is gonna have a canary if we start having drones flying off of even back roads. The amount of ground safety precautions they're gonna want is massive. They really got after the manned applicators for just landing next to the tender trucks, out on the back stretches. It's really frowned upon. And then, so now again with the drones, if we start to go to big fixed wing ones, they're going to have to integrate better with either traditional airport infrastructure or, again, farmers having their own little strips. As much as they only need a couple 100 feet to take off, it's going to require a lot more of a shift in, again, the infrastructure, the way they're flown, line of sight things come into play more, which again, there will be new rules coming next year, but to the point where, again, you can run a 10,000 acre operation off of a couple of fixed wing drones. It'd be very difficult from the legal point of view anyways. In terms of every other beast out there, again, with the new set of regulations, that 150 kilograms will be kind of that medium-sized drone. So the market's going to be whoever can get to that point first, and then we're probably going to hit a wall there for a long time. Again, I have a sweet spot. We deal with these things 14 hours a day. We use them a lot. And again, the T40, T50, 105 kilo max takeoff drones, they're kind of in a nice spot where, again, like a single guy single person, can fly them, operate them. I can lift it in the back of the truck. You start to get into something that weighs twice as much. You need more crews, more people,
Yeah.
and we operate typically out of trucks that are straight trucks. Again, some people run trailers and that sort of stuff. We always seem to be down some goat path, down getting to the back 40, and I don't want to back out a semi rig, half a mile. So I'm more partial to, again, where we're at now and teams rather than swarms.
Thank you. I appreciate the use of the word.
There.
Yeah, you can trademark that or something. George, from the research side and with the Smart Farm and with the Olds College and all the work that you're doing there, what has the greatest interest right now? What are the things that you're looking at and will be looking at in the near future?
Well, as Adrian mentioned, there's changes coming to the regulations, and one of the big ones is a move to allowing beyond visual line of sight flights. So we're part of a group that is, I guess it's research. What we're testing and advising Transport Canada on the infrastructure that needs to be in place in order to allow for that. So, we've got some equipment in our area. So quite a large part of central Alberta here is going to be covered by equipment to track all these drones that are flying beyond visual line of sight. And we're going to be reporting on that and seeing that change the industry a lot when that is allowed. I think It is still pretty scary, and a lot of people are gonna be upset about that. I mean, I've been threatened several times because one of the things that with the research that we do, we oftentimes are out in other people's fields, and if the neighbors don't know what's going on, they don't like to see a drone flying over, their house and that. So to think that we're gonna have ones that don't even have an operator within visual line of sight of that drone is going to be going to take a lot to get used to. But if that goes, I think that one of the interesting projects that we're looking at is I don't know if you've heard of the drone in the box concept. We've got mini drones that are in a hangar of their own. They're solar powered. They've got a little weather station on them and all this, and they basically are programmed to just fly a pattern every day or whatever. So I could foresee, something like that where we have one of those drones with, say, a hyperspectral camera that can actually identify different types of plants going out and then sending. It comes back, processes the data automatically in the cloud, and then sends a spraying drone out to do some spot spraying somewhere. And nobody ever touches the controls.
Right.
That's kind of the freaky scenario of the future, I think, that could happen. And on the livestock side as well, where a drone goes out and, monitors where the cattle are, and with, thermal cameras, you find a cow that is starting to calf, and it sends a signal to somebody to go out and check this out or something like that. So those kinds of things, I think, are some of the potential for the future.
It certainly might be a bit weird to think of. Yes, you're right. Of not having someone giving it a directive every time or whatever, but realistically there could be a couple cool operations that it would save a lot of time. I'm just thinking if it could pick up a dead sheep, that would be great. So if it could scout for those and then I don't have to touch them, I would buy that drone. I'm telling you right now. So let's work on that. But definitely, like there's certainly some cool operations I think that we're just starting to figure out. I think I would probably agree for what it's worth that it doesn't replace your high clearance sprayer by any stretch, but it becomes a really cool complement to some of the things that we can do either scouting wise or even for field traffic. And really good point, that the rules are there for a reason. And as they evolve, we will keep up with them and try and share all that. And if anyone has questions, ask someone you trust, not the internets. There was I gotta say, guys, there was a lot of conversation happening on some social media platforms this summer that was a little disheartening because there was a lot of misinformation out there. So thank you for sharing the facts. And so please, everyone, fact check some things. Okay, we'll leave it there. Adrian, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it, and stay safe out there with all your flying. And George, good luck next week. First week back to school. I hope you have your all your school supplies packed and ready to go. It is like my favorite time of year, and I don't even get to go back to school anymore. But the kids do. So that is fantastic. All right. Okay. Thank you, George. Thank you, Adrian. Thanks, producer Jay, of course, as well. Thank you to our sponsors for making all this happen. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and sticking with us. We will not be back next week, of course. It's the long weekend, holiday Monday. We don't have a show, but catch us the week after, of course, at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we head into, we'll call it our new school year of the Agronomists starting in early September. So we'll see you then. Cheers, everybody.